And so that was a mistake that I made, because I had the things, I had the technical things, but I did not take the time to do the culture work leading from an adaptive space, slowing down to speed up later. And so that's something I learned over time.
You're listening to the NASP Principal Podcast, where school leaders connect around real challenges and real growth. Today's episode explores what new leaders need to know about managing change. Assistant Principal Donna McGuire talks with Dr. Dallas Lee about leading with clarity, slowing down under pressure, and building trust when everyone is watching. Let's get started.
Hello, thank you for tuning in to the NASP Principal Podcast. I'm Donna McGuire, the proud assistant principal of the Park Terrace School in New York City, and the moderator for NASP's Assistant Principal Community of Practice. I will be your host for today's episode. We're going to have a discussion on change management for new leaders, and I'm so excited to introduce you to our esteemed guest, Dr. Dallas Lee. Dallas is an assistant superintendent of educational services and operations in the elementary school district number 159 in Matson, Illinois. Welcome, Dallas. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. So glad to be here.
Great. All right, so let's get into it. Our first question.
Let's do it.
Which issue do you see arising the most for new principals or leaders looking to implement change at their school?
Sure. So one thing that I've noticed over time, and I'm going into year 17, that when leaders enter a space, and that leader can be an assistant principal or principal, in my case, assistant superintendent, I stepped into my role about less than 2 years ago, there is a deep desire to want to exact change, to want to do good work. And it's a balance of wanting to do good work, and I'll be 100% honest and say sometimes it's driven by ego.
You know, Dallas, I'm going to ask you for a second about that. Many leaders talk about a 90-day model, and they want to do so much. They have that mission, the vision, they want to work with it. But then they're so eager. There's ego. And they also have to know how to slow their roll, how to feel the crowd, to make sure they scaffold that in just the right way. Like, what do you think about that?
Sure. And so when I talk about ego, I wouldn't even say ego is a bad thing all the time, because with ego, there's confidence and an assurance within that person that they can do the role. And at the same time, having been in that space, sometimes driven by ego, I know all the eyes are watching. And so you have those who perhaps may have interviewed against you for the position. You have those from the school from which you may have left, and they're watching you. You have parents and guardians and well-wishers, they're watching. And then you have the wider community, they're watching. And so you're under a ridiculous amount of pressure that you put on yourself. And that's that ego lens where you know you can do the work. That's that confidence and self-assurance. And at the same time, you just feel this immense amount of pressure that you just can't get it wrong because everyone's watching. So there's a really delicate balance that new leaders need to kind of sit in as they go into new spaces, that ego and understanding that they can do the work at the same time, lessening that ego.
You know, that's such an important statement, because all eyes are watching. They selected you for that position for a reason. It wasn't by circumstance. You're there for a reason. But they also want to see you make that change. But then, yes, there's some people that are reluctant to change. So it's a delicate balance. It's a juggling act. So maybe you have to get the people who you might feel are not totally with you to be with you, right? All right. What's an example of a new initiative that was successful for you, and why did you think it was successful?
I would go back to my first year as principal. I served as principal of a kindergarten through 8th grade school, no more than 480 young people. And one thing that I changed or added to the school's community was just meeting with all of my students every morning. And so for my kindergarten through 3rd grade students, I met with them virtually every single morning. We'd do some type of dance. And we were a school rooted in like sharing positive characteristics about self. So every morning just coming on and having those types of conversations with students and having them lead those virtual communication sessions with me or conversations with me. But for my middle school students, understanding it was difficult for them to be middle schoolers in a school with little people as well, bringing them downstairs every single morning and going through some form of motivation and celebrations and things I wanted them to keep in mind. And just having that system every day where I met with all of my kids allowed me to build that connection, if you will, in my first year, which allowed for really positive traction and some positive change within the school.
You know, whether you were remote or not, you were doing something every day. You built that routine to be with the students. So when you did that personally, everyone else was watching. All the staff members, I'm not saying teachers, everybody was watching.
Yeah.
And I have noticed myself that when I go into schools, I've been in different schools, where I made that change was when they watched me model the change,
Sure.
model what I wanted, and did it with the kids. No ego. You just do what you want to do because it works and you want it to make it work. And then slowly they come around, right? And it slowly changes culture as well, right?
But I want to jump in real quick and say that when that happens and you begin to lead by modeling, you're actually just being driven by your values. That's my opinion. And so sometimes when you have those ego moments where you're like, oh my God, everyone's watching, and you feel the pressure from all the angles, it's my suggestion to all new leaders out there is to tap into your values and know what you want to see, what you value, what's important to you. And when you can tap into those values and you know who you are, you know what you can do for and with children, it allows you to do that work with greater clarity. That's what I'm looking for here, clarity. And it's bigger than confidence, because when you're doing it with clarity, you know that whether it goes well or if it doesn't go so well, you are clear in what you're doing and why you're doing it. So when I go back to the example of change that worked well, and I'm meeting with young people virtually for my younger students and my older students in person every single day, the value for me was a strong social emotional connection with my kids. And though I was the principal, I needed to know who those children were. And I wanted those children to know who I was. So that if they ever needed anything, they knew I had their backs. And so that's the value that drove that behavior. Yeah.
Dallas, there's a saying that synergy creates more synergy.
Yes.
So when you're connecting with the kids and people are watching, they became teachers because they love kids, just like we love children. And they want to be connected too. And it's not magic. When they stand there and watch, and then they want to come in. They're like, wow, you're developing a bond with the children and you're getting them to go. And this school is becoming a little more exciting. They're getting more involved and deeper connected. They want to do better, higher performance. Who doesn't want to be on that bus, right?
Bingo.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about an example of an initiative that was not as successful as you hoped. And what were the main challenges?
So let's go to year 2 of the principalship.
Okay.
I changed schools and went to a school much larger, about 950 young people in a state of turnaround. And there were quite a few leaders over time. And I knew going in, one of my primary objectives was to stabilize culture. But the mistake that I made was having the systems organized, that was the very technical part. But I did not take time to lead with my values because I was so afraid, because I was stepping into a new space still as a novice leader. And so I wanted people to have the things, the systems, the platforms where they could enter the positive points or where they could write the referrals. But I did not take time in that first year at that school and in my second year of the principalship to really hone in on knowing who our kids are, how do we treat them, and what can we learn about one another as a community between teachers, staff, school leaders, and students, where we grow through that synergy that you talked about. And so that was a mistake that I made, because I had the things, I had the technical things, but I did not take the time to do the culture work leading from an adaptive space, slowing down to speed up later. And so that's something I learned over time, because I stayed at that school for 5 years and I got better every single year, where I was clearer around how we engage with one another and how we engage with young people, which helped us right the ship and stabilize culture. But that is a huge mistake that I made going into that space.
But you know what? It says something about you that you're willing to share with us, all of us, so that we can grow from that. And what I'm going to say that I heard you mention was that the systems or protocols, right?
Yes, yes.
You were focusing on the science of it.
Sure.
But it's an art and a science.
Oh, it's an art and a science. But here's the thing. I knew that. I knew that as a teacher. I knew that as a first-year principal, and having served as a resident principal, I knew the things. But I was so afraid to just slow down and let people, here we go. Sometimes I have to find my words. I was afraid to be vulnerable in that space because it was so challenging. And I didn't want people to see me leading through a space of vulnerability, knowing that I love children, but I didn't always emote or give off the position of that I love children. And so when I slowed down to let folks see that I was a human being and that I value children and that I want the best for children, specifically children of color, because we had a high population of multilingual learners and children from traditionally under-resourced communities within our community. When I slowed down to make sure that people understood my values around that work, it got better and it felt less sticky. You know? Mm-hmm.
I think that the position that you had and the school that you served probably lacked, or the biggest deficit you saw, was that it was missing the structures, and that you, as a triage, came in to try to get that in place right away. But you cannot do it in a solo. And you can't do it by yourself. You need the teams. You need everyone to understand those protocols. And maybe that could have been, part of the reason why you didn't get going the way you wanted. Is that a possibility?
That, and it was something you and I were talking about earlier. I didn't think I was going to last very long in that position. I didn't think I was going to make it. And so my thinking in that moment was to go in, triage, and do the things, the systems. But if you can't do the systems without the hard work, without the adaptive work, without people seeing and knowing that you are a human being. So just slowing down to speed up was something I learned that I'll take forever with me wherever I go.
Every leader's journey looks a little different, but one thing is true for all of us. The work asks you to keep learning, keep listening, and keep growing alongside your school community. We asked 2 school leaders to share a few reflections from their own experiences. Darren Doherty, principal of North Elementary School in St. Peter, Minnesota, and Scott Borba, superintendent and principal of the La Grande Union Elementary School District in California.
Really kind of take it in. Don't feel like you have to act right away. Really understand the context of things and define things, and really see if you can figure out what the culture of the spaces that you're entering into before you feel like you need to act or plan or direct.
We're not perfect. I think everybody expects us to have the right answer to every problem. We really just want to be part of the team as well, and not always be the sage that knows everything. So give us some grace. We'll give you some grace. Allow us to make mistakes. We'll be happy to allow you to make mistakes. Let's believe in one another.
And if you're looking to grow your leadership alongside other principals, join us at the National School Leaders Conference powered by NAESP, July 13th through 15th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. It's a chance to learn practical strategies, connect with peers, and recharge for the year ahead. This year also features Camp Lead a Lot, a special one-day leadership retreat for school leaders at any career stage. Learn more and register at naespconference.org. That's naespconference.org. Now, back to the conversation with Donna and Dr. Lee.
What role do you think assistant principals play in implementing their change in schools?
Assistant principals are key to any school culture, academic culture, culture and climate. But when I think about the role of the assistant principal, I'm going to really suggest that they take time to always be in a space of, yes, you want to do, but always be a learner. Never be afraid to ask questions about the what, the why, and the how. of the change that the principal would like to see. And as you're leading change with the principal, see if you can find ways to share your thinking out loud around what it could look like if you were to serve as principal. So that way you have someone with whom you can spar, share your thoughts, and that your principal perhaps can give you some thinking as well. So that way when you step into the space and you have to lead change as the principal, you would have had someone to walk you through your thought processes in the past, from the past.
That's really brilliant, Dallas. And principals hire assistant principals so that there could be that yin-yang effect that they can balance each other.
Sure.
And you're going to have different skill sets and you could develop them together. And yes, maybe the one day those assistant principals will grow into the role of principal.
Yes.
And that principal, your partner, your mentor, will share and show you the way.
Indeed.
But as an assistant principal, you can't be reluctant or afraid to say, I don't know. They know that you're coming out of a different role. But be open with them to say, how would you do it? Or can you guide me?
Sure.
That makes the learning curve so much quicker.
Be open and be vulnerable, because the position of the assistant principal, in my opinion, is very, very difficult because you're serving multiple people's needs at the same time. You're trying to meet the teacher's needs, the parents' needs, the young people's needs, and the principal's needs all at the same time. And so sometimes I think if assistant principals can just let their guard down, if they have the space where they can, share with their principal, just share their thinking with the principal, so that way they can understand how best to organize thinking when they become a school leader themselves, a principal themselves.
And that's right. And that's a really good takeaway, so that they know that that is something that you grow throughout your journey, throughout your career.
And it's okay to have pain points. You will not always have it. You won't always be right. You won't always have it together. So think it through, talk it through. So that way when you're in the seat, you know how to think it through.
Earlier you were talking about ego.
Yeah.
And the fine line between ego and being humble, humility.
Yes.
We have to also be humble.
Yeah.
And realize that we're serving
Bingo.
others.
That's the first thing. You are a servant
Admit
first.
our mistakes, or take it and reflect upon it to grow from that.
Never hesitate to admit when you're wrong or may have made a misstep. And that's something I've learned throughout time. It's okay to admit it, but be clear in how you're learning to not go to that space again.
There you go.
Boom.
Bingo. All right, Dallas, how do you manage stakeholder buy-in and handle pushback if it becomes significant?
Never stop listening to your stakeholders. And one thing that I've learned over time, even now in my role as assistant superintendent and aspiring superintendent, people's perceptions are their realities.
There you go.
It is not your job to change the person's perceptions. It is your job to understand the multiple stakeholders' perceptions. And as a leader, create the conditions to where everyone's needs, to the best of your ability, with the resources that you have, are met with a spirit of equity and excellence. And so when working through or working with multiple stakeholders, no, you'll never please everyone. You'll never please everyone. But people's needs are real, and the needs may not always come out pretty or the way that we want them to. Be patient as you work with multiple stakeholders. Take notes, learn, listen. And as you're learning and as you're listening, adjust and be clear with your stakeholders in how you're meeting the needs of the greater community through excellence and equity.
That is very good advice. I'm going to ask you, though, if school leaders create an initiative or are working on something, how do you think they should respond to a major setback in their new initiative, if that should happen?
Sure. I'm talking, one thing I believe about this is that you have to be clear in the root cause of why the change is needed in the first place. So make sure everyone understands why you're trying to change this thing. And before you change it, you want to get multiple perspectives on what it could look like, sound like, and feel like in this new space. So you have stated the case for the change. You've gotten feedback on what it could look like in the space. But let's say when you push play on the change and you've you've shared your case and you've gotten the feedback and it's still not going right. Be clear in the missteps. Be honest, be vulnerable, and let folks know what the shift is going to be or what the pivot is going to be, so that the desired state still aligns with the initial reason or the initial case why the change was needed in the first place. So don't lose sight of the goal. I had a supervisor, Dr. Coleman, who used to say, keep the main thing the main thing. Know your main thing and make sure that main thing is rooted in data. But if your processes or the way that you're going to get there is misaligned, go back, make changes, be clear in why you needed to make changes, but keep the main thing the main thing.
I think the communication of that is so important, to explain your moves.
Yes.
Because if there was a misstep and others recognize that,
Yeah.
and you just kept moving,
Sure.
they'd say, what is going on?
Yeah.
And why is he not being transparent about it?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And if I can pause here for a second, I think it's okay for new leaders to recognize that once we realize the change is not going the way we wanted to go, we freeze sometimes and we get stuck and we just we don't want to move because we're so either embarrassed or we may not know the next right move to take. My suggestion when you're in these moments where you just don't know what to do next or you're embarrassed, stop and center yourself. Just freeze. Just take a moment and think. And then plan out the best next step. And then the best next step. Just understand you don't have to do everything at one time, all the time. And as you just shared not too long ago, just communicate to folks. And my last thing here is just try and find various communication avenues, because folks, when being led through change, may not always just read the bulletin, or they may not be as attentive during your staff meeting. So make sure that when you're leading change, you're communicating the change process through multiple formats throughout the entire way.
So for someone starting maybe this school year, the upcoming school year, do you have any final advice for someone who's looking to implement change in their school? They're going in a new scenario. What could you say to them?
A few pieces of advice. Know your community extremely well. Perhaps you move from one school to another as assistant principal to principal, or principal to another school as principal, or whatever. Know your community, even if you're serving as a superintendent, because the community has history. And you need to understand the lived experience of the individuals whom you serve. Second is to make sure you know who you are. Know your values, know what you believe in, know why you do this work. And while some folks might find it to be trite or, kind of boring to always go back to your why, know what your why is. And lastly, just always remember you're a servant. You're not going to get it right all the time, but if you keep a spirit of servanthood and servitude, you'll be fine.
Oh, Dallas, respecting the history of the school, respecting the people within it, knowing your why, and knowing what do you bring to the table and why are you there, right? That's so critical. All right, so this has been really a wonderful opportunity to sit with you today, and thank you for sharing your insight with us. It's been very informative, and it was just really great to hear your perspective on ways new leaders can drive effective change in their educational communities.
Sure.
I'm sure our audience will find your tips and advice very helpful. And again, thank you for joining us on this episode of the NESP Principal Podcast.
Thank you for your time.
To learn more about leadership supports and tools that strengthen your practice, especially as you navigate change, visit NASP.org and explore the Resource Hub. The NASP Principal Podcast is produced by the National Association of Elementary School Principals. Learn more about our community and membership at NASP.org. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the NASP Principal Podcast and share it with a colleague. Together, we're building stronger schools and stronger leaders.